Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Happy New Year to all of you, and thank you again for supporting us. And as always, if this is your first time joining us, please go ahead and subscribe to our channel. Every action, every comment, every like that you guys give us helps us spread the word of digital gold and silver. Joining me today, I have again Phill Streible of Blue Line Futures. Phill, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So first off, we just closed off that year, a fantastic year for gold and silver. You know, we've seen arguably their best year since 2010. So right off the hop, my question is, what do you foresee coming into 2021?
Well, I've been saying that I believe that silver is ultimately going to outperform gold, and I think it'll really be seen, especially in the first half of 2021. And I think that silver will have a tailwind towards the end of the year, and I think that's where we could see some of these much higher levels. I think gold's going to really have a problem the first half of the year, and you could see just day after day right now that it's not really been performing that well. And I think that's really the first half of the year. I'm not very bullish on gold at all, but I think the second half is when it starts to take off and it catches up to silver.
So to your point then, the ratio is now currently around that 70 range. Where do you see that ratio going if it's going to be a bullish year for silver?
Yeah, I started this, this narrative on silver outperforming gold when it was about, 75 to 77. So it's already starting to prove the thesis. But I really think that, there's really no telling on the ratio, how low it can go, especially if you get silver breaking loose and gold just stagnant. So it could completely collapse the ratio. But I think realistically, it's going to continue to just whittle its way down. And I really see 65, 60, but silver, we all know how volatile and how the average true range could just blow out to the upside on it. And it could just, leave gold in the dust.
Absolutely. And I mean, I've heard plenty of talk with the potential of the Green New Deal having an impact potentially on silver prices, given the need for silver in much of modern electronics, including green technology. Do you feel like this will potentially play a role in the price, impacting the price?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm completely behind it. And I mean, just, it's ironic that, I bought a new watch 2 days ago and the face of it is a solar panel. It doesn't even need to plug in anymore. So, I think that this kind of technology is just continuously finding itself in other areas. I had an Apple Watch for the last 5 years. And one thing I hated was having to plug it in every night. And it seemed like the battery would die on it. Well, they replaced, Garmin's got one with a solar panel in it, and I was trying to find out the technology behind it and see if there was silver and what other, rare earths and other metals that were in there, because I just think that this is a trend that's just going to continue.
Absolutely. So then you would say that it's a buy. That's your play for silver right now.
Yeah, I really like silver. I think that anytime you get these, you get the dollar up, you get gold weighing down, you get a breakout on interest rates, which we already saw the breakout, the 10-year yield. This has been coming for a while. I think ultimately we're going to see 10-year at 1.5%, probably into that second quarter of 2021. I think that's when really gold feels the pressure. And then that pressure is relieved once some of the economic data compresses, and then gold will make its comeback.
Absolutely. So speaking of pressure, the obvious elephant in the room is that the blockchain market in Bitcoin is absolutely, going hyperbolic. I think it just breached 40K as of the time of this day of recording. But, given this, do you feel like this movement within the blockchain space in Bitcoin is part of what's impacting gold and silver, for the record's performance?
Oh, 100%. I think that there's a different type of investor out there. A lot of, I think I'm kind of an old guy being in this bit. I've done this for 20 years. I'm 42. The guys that are 22 years old, they don't talk about buying gold, buying silver, storing it, like the way I did when I was a young guy. I accumulated, 5,000 ounces of silver, and I'd store it in a safety deposit box and things like that. It's big, it's heavy to lug around. So I think that their safety, their, storing value and things like that is in these, you know, they've got their little digital wallets and they're putting their cryptocurrencies in it. You know, and I hate to say that, you know, it seems like it's two different crowds out there. It's a younger crowd going after cryptocurrencies, and it's an older crowd that goes after the metals.
Absolutely. Interestingly enough, though, you know, this is more of a speculative, hypothetical point. You know, do you think that potentially this is because these two audiences, the younger audience being the blockchain audience, you think it's because they are perhaps like less educated on the subject of gold and silver and why they are valuable, or why do you think there's such a difference?
I would hate you can't like I would never like really come out and say that, oh, someone's not sophisticated because they don't know this or that, because the blockchain technology is so advanced. I mean, it's like, you know, they had to explain it to me 20 times before I could even grasp this thing and like walk me through another example, you know, where it's like gold and silver. It's like you just buy it and you are basically playing this inflation play. You know, I think that, you know, it's tough to value these particular assets like these cryptocurrencies and coins and things like that. That's why, you know, Bitcoin, for instance, traveling through 40,000, I got to, like, I'm like, wow, you know, what would I rather have? I told a couple clients, I'm like, I think I'd rather have a brand new car than, you know, own one Bitcoin that I can't actually touch. So, you know, and it seems like that crowd will agree with me. And then I call another guy up and I'm like, don't you think 40,000 is pretty high? Because we trade the Bitcoin futures contract by the CME. And I was telling a guy, you know, he bought one contract which controls 5 Bitcoin at 20,000. Now it's at 40,000. He's up $100,000 on this one contract. And he's like, Phil, it's going to, don't tell me, you know, sell it until it gets to 50 or 100,000 a Bitcoin. And I'm like, wow, like, this is amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, so to speak. I do potentially see perhaps a little bit of an education, because I speak to people quite a bit as well. You know, they're two different entire worlds. And the technology, you're right, is quite sophisticated, and it's not a matter of investors being like less educated, but I think maybe perhaps less exposed. But that's a, you know, that's a point of speculation, and that's part of what we're doing, right? Is taking these old mediums of gold and silver and bringing them to that new blockchain audience by digitizing them on the blockchain. That's largely the purpose of LODE and the AGX assets. So Phil, I that's all the questions I have for you today. Once again, I really appreciate you joining us. Any closing advice for our community with respects to silver this year?
Well, I think that, you know, like I said, the first half silver is going to perform well. Second half silver is going to see gold, and the reason is behind it is because when you get into the second quarter of 2021, that's when you're going to see the economic data. It's basically we're starting at a 0 point with the start of COVID, and economic data is continuously getting better at this much greater rate of change. It'll start to compress in that second half. That's when they'll start pounding the table that they need to have more stimulus. The Fed needs to be more accommodative. Interest rates have gotten too high, and it'll actually start pumping the brakes. That's when gold takes off. Something I like to see, though, is how Bitcoin will react in a rising dollar environment. The rising dollar environment's not going to be here for a long time. However, I'd like to see how it reacts. Does it work inversely correlated or not?
Absolutely. That will definitely be a great point for observation in the future. Phil, once again, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.